I'm Cathy Waddington and welcome back to the Old Bakery in Mersham, Kent. If you remember from the last video, I purchased the property post-auction at the end of August 2019. We're rapidly approaching August 2020 and you might think that perhaps we would have finished by now. Alas, no, we haven't actually even started and of course there's several reasons for that. The first one being that the listed building consent and planning permission took an astronomical 16 weeks to come through. We didn't receive it until almost the middle of February this year. And then of course, COVID-19 has further added to delays. And so in fact, as we approach August 2020, almost a year from when I bought the bakery, we haven't actually started work, which is frustrating, but I accept that these things take time. I always knew that it was not going to be a quick project, but I think, if I'm being honest, I had expected that actually a year would see me in and out. And you'll see from the images that I post in a moment that we haven't actually started, and in fact nothing has really changed since we were here last, but at least I can give you an update on what will be starting shortly. So again, we're going to walk through to the kitchen, which is at the rear of the property. As you can see, not a lot changed here. This is probably the most sad looking room actually in the whole bakery. It's a little bit dark and gloomy. It will be improved once the bars are taken off the windows and we have permission to do that. This ceiling forms part of the flying freehold, and so unfortunately we can't put downlighters or anything like that in here because the ceiling has to be fireproofed, and so the lighting in here has proved a little bit of a challenge, but I'm hoping that I've managed to sort that out with a combination of ceiling pendants and wall lights. The wooden panelling at the end there will be retained. It will be removed obviously whilst the building work is going on, but it will be replaced and put back exactly as is. The wall at the back there with the blue paint on will be where the range sits. And then you come around and you can see the little window going through to the pantry the other side, which will also be retained. And then we have the little fireplace. There was a fireplace there originally. You can actually see the hearth there just in red tile on the floor. We're not replacing a fireplace there. That will just be plastered out and made as a little nook. The Belfast sink we will be reusing. Will be fitted in under the window, and the architect has designed a lovely pot cupboard which will fit in that corner, which will give a huge amount of shelving and space, and will all be very tidy with doors and everything on there, so that will be a big improvement to that area. So what you can see at the moment is the stairs in inverted commas. That's currently how we get upstairs. When I bought the property, because there were never stairs in here, the only way that people could access the upstairs was for them to poke a hole between the beams upstairs, which you can see. And so in fact you sort of have to shimmy up between the joists of what was the old bathroom. Obviously one of the first things on the builder spec to get installed is the new staircase, which will be positioned roughly where those black sacks are now. And obviously that will make life a whole lot easier if we don't actually have to keep going up and down through the ladder. Probably one of the biggest changes since the first video is that we've had the fence erected in the back garden, separating us from the pub. And so actually we've finally got some privacy, and it's made a huge difference, I think, to the back. I'm quite pleased with the size of the garden now that the fence is up. We've also had to put a gate in the side so that we can access out onto the side alleyway. So here we are from the other end. You can see the fence, and with the holly tree removed you can see the whole of the rear elevation of the building, which is actually really nice. It's opened it up, so much more light inside, and actually once the garden's cleared I think will be a really nice little space out here, so I'm very pleased with the garden. Obviously all the tile hanging on the back is going to have to be stripped off and redone. So the first window you can see there on the outside, on the alleyway, that's going to be where the new front door will be. And that's the new gate. So we've started to do a little bit of the strip out ourselves, born out of the frustration that we weren't able to do anything else really during the lockdown. You might recall that this, the wall that I'm showing you here in the old shop front area, used to have, it was basically ceiling to floor wooden shelves which were very, very rotten. Well, at least the backboards were very rotten. We sort of were lulled into a false sense of security, thinking that they would be very easy to remove. It took me and my son about 5 hours and a considerable amount of force to remove it all. In fact, the shelves themselves and the uprights were very, very solidly fixed. But at least that is now down. You can see an area in the corner which will be used as a cupboard in the finished property. There'll be a door comes across here, and then that space in behind will be used as a cupboard to house the meters and for hooks. The sort of the doorway that you can see at the back there, that was originally a door going through to the public house next door. I don't know whether the baker used it to pop through for a well-earned pint at the end of his day's baking, but anyway, it's clearly not been used for a long time. The little window that you can see here in the internal wall was actually used as a sort of a receptionist's window when the bakery was used last, which was as an accountant's office, and they used the centre section of the building as an office, and then obviously used to sort of slide that window up and down as and when people came in the front door. Originally we'd intended to board it up, but Tim the architect suggested that actually it might be quite nice to leave it as a feature. It will throw light through to the staircase, the new staircase, which will be immediately behind it. So I actually think that's a really nice idea, and so we'll be keeping that. You can see here we've removed, there was a lot of pegboarding on the walls, which is where the green paint is behind, so that's all come down. You can see the floor tiles here, which are the ones that are possibly containing cement, so we've not done anything with those, we've just left those undisturbed. That's the best thing to do until they can be removed properly. And then in terms of the shop front, we haven't really done much there at all. We've taken off the fronts of the cupboards underneath the window stalls. The meter here had to be refixed by United Power Networks because it was coming away from the wall. It was very, very wet and damp behind here. And the board, which you can now see that the fuse is fixed to, basically just rotted away, and it was sort of swinging free. So they came out very promptly and fixed that back for us, and I'm just waiting for GEC to come out and fit us a new meter, because obviously we can't start any work in the building until we have power, and at the moment we have none. So once we got the list of building consent and planning permission through, we obviously had to expand the building schedule into a schedule of works, and put the work out to tender, which we did, and that went out at the beginning of June. We went out to 4 fairly local building companies. One of them came back to us pretty immediately and said that he wasn't able to do the work, which was unfortunate, but you know, it happens. And so we sent out to the other 3. A second one came back about 2 weeks into the tender time and said that he was prepared to submit a tender, but that he had also tendered for another much larger job in London, and if that came through, he would be taking that one instead because it was a much bigger contract than ours. So again, that was a little bit alarming because we really wanted the 3 figures for comparison, but as I say, he very kindly said that he would submit his tender regardless of what happened. So we gave 4 weeks. The tenders were due in at 6 p.m. on the 30th of June. At 6:15, the architect phoned me, all very cloak and dagger, and opened them whilst we were on the phone. And yeah, I mean, the prices varied hugely. We had one come in at 197,500 plus VAT, which I have to say was a bit of a jaw dropper. I hadn't quite expected it to be that much. The second tender from the builder that was unable to do the work was 130,000 plus VAT, so a vast difference clearly. And then the third tender came in at 162 plus VAT, so obviously that one sort of sat quite nicely in the middle. We looked through them all very carefully. There seemed to be a few discrepancies which we went back to the builders with and asked them to clarify. Areas where perhaps one was very heavily overpriced in comparison to the other two. And once we'd done that and satisfied ourselves that everything was good, we decided to go with the builder that had come in with the middle tender, the 162,000 plus VAT. He's a builder that the architect has already worked with and has known for a number of years, which fills me with confidence because he understands how the architect works and what standard is expected of him. And also he's done some demolition work for me already on site. So I've met him, I'm familiar with the way he works, and I was happy that he's the right person to go with. As soon as we knew that we'd obtained the planning permission and listed building consent, we appointed several different professional bodies to conduct some surveys. So we needed an asbestos survey. We also wanted to appoint a specialist damp and infestation survey so that we knew what we were dealing with in terms of those items. The asbestos survey came back with some advisory notices. There is a space heater, an old sort of night storage heater on the ground floor, which apparently contains asbestos in the pads used on the feet. And also the old shop section at the front has some floor tiles down, and the cement that those tiles are fixed with might also contain asbestos. There was also a small amount found in one of the stud walls upstairs, which we think was done in the 1960s. So those three areas are obviously of concern. The company that did the survey quoted to remove those items, but we have also included the removal of those items in the building specification. So we'll see how the builder's price compares to the specialist company, and it may well be we go with the builder depending on who comes out to be the most reasonable in terms of cost. The damp and infestation survey took place at the beginning of April. That proved quite interesting. It's more damp than dry, but I was sort of expecting that. There's also quite a large infestation problem upstairs. We have Death Watch beetle and furniture beetle, both of which are active and busy chomping their way through the floor joists and floorboards. So obviously both of those need to be tackled. They noticed and pointed out several areas of concern for damp on the ground floor, which is coming up from underneath the slab, basically. And these are all things which will be addressed when the builders start. We will have a specialist membrane put down before we put any new flooring down. And likewise on the walls, the plaster will be hacked off to 1.20 m around all the external walls on the ground floor, and a membrane applied before the plastering is done. And so all of that these are all specialist products designed for listed buildings, and all of that will hopefully ensure that there are no issues with damp in the future. I mean, obviously once the property is heated, bear in mind it's never to date had any central heating at all, then that will also considerably improve the damp. So hopefully that will all sort itself out.